Kendrick Lamar's latest effort is newly released, and as expected, people are hype. Some love it, some hate it. He often has a lot of depth and meaning to his releases, so it's probably going to take a while to really get it all, but let's see what we can take from it with an early listening. The album starts off with the track United in Grief, which has singer Sam Dew singing about finding peace of mind and even features Kendrick's fiancée Whitney on the track, repeating the words, "Tell them the truth, tell them." And Kendrick finishes off the intro stating that he's been going through something for the past 1,855 days, which is the time since his previous album, Damn, was released. This first 30 seconds or so of the album is foreshadowing for how the general feel of the album will be, and as you could probably guess, it's pretty introspective, thought-provoking, and pretty interesting, I'll give it that. Kendrick on this track mentions that he started going to therapy, which is great. On the first listen, the song honestly just lost me as the chorus sounds like he's just rapping part of the verse, as he does his usual rapid changing up of flow and tone of voice, along with the beat changing throughout the song. The track gives us a little bit more insight on his mind state, questioning fame and fortune, and looking at things from different perspectives. The next song, N95, named after the type of mask, has things picking up a bit as Kendrick basically raps about the mask that we use to cover who we really are. Throughout the first verse, he tells everyone to take off the clout chase, take off the Wi-Fi, take off the weird ass jewelry, and so on. Essentially the things that don't or really shouldn't probably define us that we use to try to make ourselves feel better, like social media and jewelry. The new pandemic we've been facing has had most people staying home more and much more focused on their own social media followings and the like. Basically, a bunch of superficiality. If that's what Kendrick is really trying to get across here, and it looks like that is very well the case, then I completely agree, and this is one of the better and more relatable tracks from the album for me, subject matter wise at least. Despite it being a bit more of a downer in the second and third verses, as he's speaking on things like the stock market crashing and people becoming homeless to questioning the morals and integrity of society. The album then slides into the next track, Worldwide Steppers, with an introduction by Kodak Black. Oh yeah, I didn't mention it, but Kodak Black is basically the narrator for this album, to which some are puzzled by the combination, but more on that later. Worldwide Steppers features an interesting perspective. Kendrick mentions his daughter as well as his newborn son and even implies his own infidelity in his relationship with lines like, "Text messaging bitches got my thumbs hurting." It's a line that gives me a quick chuckle, but then further in he goes deeper into it by talking about his first time having sex with a white chick. But that's not enough though, since he follows it up with his second time too. The monotone quick fire way he states it still kinda gives me a laugh, but also speaks to possible relationship issues and how he's more ready to speak about it openly in his music, as is seen later on in the album. But the line that takes the cake is him ending his verse talking about the ancestors watching him have sex with these white chicks is like retaliation. It speaks to the misconception of black men being with white women to get back at white people for slavery. Speaking from personal experience, that doesn't really work, but it does feel good. The beat switches up for like 10 seconds in the last verse while Kendrick kicks some knowledge. I'm here for it, especially the lines about the death of freedom of speech and opinions being the death of people. Essentially, the court of public opinion is a cruel one. You know how one famous person will give their opinion on something and then mobs of people online will sometimes quite literally call for their death? Yeah, it's some pretty sick behavior. Lyrically so far, Kendrick is on point still, but up to this point, I'm not a fan of the beats, which is a pretty common problem with Kendrick's music for me. The album continues on with Die Hard, aka the dance track of the album if I had to pick one. On the first listen, I thought this was Frank Ocean singing on the chorus, but it's actually an artist called BLXST, which I've been pronouncing as Blast. Hopefully that's correct. Die Hard is a love song. Basically, Kendrick trying to get his fiancée to forgive him so he can do better and the relationship can improve. Some people have been saying it has a similar feeling to Loyalty from his previous album, Damn, and I can see that. It gives me a bit of an Island vibe, like maybe Rihanna should have been on this one too, and just call it Loyalty Part 2. The featured singers did their thing on it though. It's one of the songs on here that I could say you'd want to listen to with your partner. There's one song, however, I get to a little later though, that is anything but a couple song. At least a good one. The next track, Father Time, is, as you could probably guess, all about Kendrick's relationship with his father and how it has affected him. Basically, how tough love can lead to us not being able to handle our emotions well. The intro has his fiance telling him to go to therapy and him rebuffing her saying that real niggas don't need it. Unfortunately, it is a common mentality that many black men in the United States have, especially in the inner city. The song features Sampha on the chorus singing about tough love and bottled up emotions. Kendrick ends the song by taking some accountability for his actions, while also explaining that it comes from the way his father raised him, and he addresses those that were raised without a father as well. He even makes a reference to Kanye and Drake squashing their beef, and admits that he questions how they were able to do it, and surmises that he has maturing to do. It's probably one of the better tracks on here. Though I can't personally relate to having a father like that, I can't imagine that a lot of people out there can. The next track, Rich Interlude, is the first of 2 interludes on the album and is a Kodak Black solo track. Kodak on here pretty much does spoken word over this piano that starts off slow and gets more rapid and frantic sounding. It's actually some of the better production on the album to me. I kinda wish Kendrick was on it. I'm not sure the relationship between the 2 artists for him to get a solo track on the album. Seriously, I really don't. If someone knows, please enlighten me. Anyways, Kodak dictates his story of growing up committing crimes to get by, culminating with the realization that they've gone from EBT and WIC and so on to owning property now, which is pretty nice. It's another rags to riches story where hip-hop saves someone from a life of crime. Nothing groundbreaking, but I find it enjoyable. Following that interlude is the track Rich Spirit. Like the chorus says, rich nigga, broke phone. Well, that about sums up the song. He raps about still having his morals and integrity despite being rich and successful now. In one line in particular, he raps the lines, I will never live my life on a computer. Well, I guess he's dissing all of us now. I'd better turn this PC off and stop listening to his album. So, I'll catch you guys later. Anyways, the chorus is kind of catchy. I can see it being used on some IG captions and tweets. Ironic as that might be given the subject matter of the song. Now, do you remember earlier when I mentioned a couple song? Well, We Cry Together is that song, as you could probably tell from the title, but it's anything but romantic. It starts off with a sample from the song June by Florence and the Machines, and then the line, this is what the world sounds like. Very important line there, keep that in mind. Actress Taylor Page plays Kendrick's girlfriend in this song, and she's clearly using her acting skills for this one. This track is basically Kendrick's version of Eminem's Kim, but instead of ending with Kendrick killing his girlfriend, they have sex after their intense arguments. It's full of the typical shots men throw at their women and vice versa, from the financial struggles, infidelity, and miscommunication. This is probably the most relatable track on the album for people that have been in or seen a relationship like that. I don't think I've ever seen a song use the F word more than this one. Someone needs to freaking check the Guinness Book of World Records on that for real. The outro has Whitney again speaking to the audience with the line, stop tap dancing around the conversation. Hopefully that conversation goes better than that song because that was just freaking traumatic. Like previous songs, it has a good concept and it's pretty in your face about it, but not high on the replayability. The track Purple Hearts comes up next to finish up the first disc of the album. Summer Walker and Ghostface Killah are featured on the track, and this song kind of goes up and down for me. The chorus has Kendrick sounding intoxicated in his tone, but his verse sounds a bit better, which is followed up by Summer Walker, who if I didn't read who was featured on the song, I would think was SZA or Jhené Aiko singing. Speaking of which, the features on this album so far have me thinking Kendrick did more than just finish his contract with TDE. There's not a single TDE artist featured on the album, which is a bit disappointing. Ghostface Killah comes through on his verse talking about God, which I guess can tie into the chorus and the overall theme of love that I get from this song, but it's still another one I mostly pass on. But as the closer of the first disc, I guess it works. Now, before I move on to disc 2, I just want to remind everybody to click that subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified for future releases. Now, let's get into the second disc. It opens up with the track Count Me Out, which has Whitney once again on the intro stating that this is session 10, which is a reference to therapy, which we've seen multiple times throughout the album, and it's also the 10th track of the album. Count Me Out is one of the better sounding tracks on here, and a pretty good opener for the second disc. Kendrick isn't doing too much of that weird stuff with his voice that turns me away from some of his other songs. There's some weird trap sounding ad-libs throughout the song though, like the Migos or Designer randomly popped up in the studio for a quick recording session. But besides that, it's pretty catchy. I love when they Count Me Out being repeated throughout the chorus has Kendrick essentially relishing in the opportunity to prove his doubters wrong. The track features DJ Dahi doing background vocals, apparently, which is different as I never heard of him singing before. I know him as a producer, but hey, he made it work with his song. The track Crown comes on next, and this brings back the melancholy feel of the album. He's singing for the majority of this song with some kind of vocal effect on his voice that makes him kind of sound split and doubled up, like an echo perhaps. It gives this feeling of loneliness, which the chorus furthers as Kendrick repeats the lines, "I can't please everybody." The song overall sounds like Kendrick talking to himself about his issues with the people around him. Heavy is the head that chose to wear the crown, alludes to Kendrick seeing himself as a king, or perhaps realizing that others see him as such, and he has difficulty meeting everybody's expectations. It's not my favorite song on the album at all, but I respect the introspection and the sentiment behind it. Silent Hill comes up next and has probably the funniest chorus on this album. Push these niggas off me like, huh. It's a lot more upbeat than some of the previous tracks on here. This is the closest thing on the album to a trap sound, and it features Kodak Black, making this his third appearance on the album so far. I think Kodak did pretty good, but I wish he would rap a bit more clearly. Like, it's hard to understand some of the words he's saying, and that always just, kind of just turns me off. I do find it to be an odd pairing, but I'm curious to know the story behind it. Especially considering Kodak is the only rap feature on here besides Kendrick's cousin Baby Keem and Ghostface Killah. I mean, your cousin and a rap legend and Kodak Black. It just seems a little bit off, but hey, I'm sure there's a reason for it. The next track is the interlude of the second disc, Savior Interlude, which like the first, doesn't feature Kendrick on it. This one is done by Baby Keem, and similarly to the first, Keem raps about his upbringing. The intro has words spoken by author Eckhart Tolle, which is another feature of the album, as he is a narrator on a few tracks as well. Keem talks about growing up in the hood, mother strung out on drugs, uncle stealing from the family, typical stuff. But then he says, grandma shooting niggas, blood on the highway. And I'm just like, yo, what kind of family drama is going on in LA County for real? This is freaking crazy. Keem seems to do this thing with his voice like Kendrick does. Maybe it runs in the family, I don't know. But I'm just not that fond of it. Unless that's just how his voice is naturally. The limited music I've heard from him makes it seem like that's just how his voice is. So maybe I'm just not a fan of Keem vocally. But besides that, he did pretty good on here. Of course, this track is followed by Savior featuring Baby Keem, who is on the chorus, and Sam Dew. Fitting with the title of the song, Kendrick basically raps about how celebrities and public figures are not our saviors. They're just human like us. The intro has him mentioning artists like J. Cole and Future, and during his verses, he mentions Tupac and even mentions Vladimir Putin and the war he's waged, causing a nightmare for others. He also shouts out Kodak Black, which makes sense given how he's featured on here a few times. Baby Keem on the chorus asks the fans, "Are you happy for me? Really, are you happy for me?" Essentially asking if we truly do care about these celebrities as human beings, or is it simply because of their status in society? I like the fact that Kendrick also called out things like the hypocrisy in people protesting for a day when injustice happens, but as a black man, he's living that life 365 days a year. He has a line here about being politically correct and how people are basically crucified for having an opinion, and it keeps them scared from sharing how they really feel. It's extremely relatable for many of us in the entertainment field, whether that's musicians, writers, reviewers, and so on. He does have a tendency to speak on issues, especially in the black community, that probably need to be addressed, but this also ties in with the point of the song. He's not our savior. We have to be able to speak for ourselves and not only look to our entertainers for guidance. Overall, this is one of my favorite songs on the album and really one of the standout tracks, both subject matter wise and with the production. It's a big step up from some of the prior tracks and less melancholy and dark. Ironically, next up is one of the most controversial songs on the album, Auntie Diaries. This song has Kendrick talking about his aunt, who is a man now, and his cousin Demetrius, who is Marianne now. The subject matter isn't very humorous or anything, but the way he says, "My auntie is a man now," just makes me laugh. Once again, his vocal inflections are quite varied. One of the things I like about Kendrick is his ability to rap about topics like this and do it pretty openly and skillfully. He speaks of his cousin's confidence in coming out essentially as his aunt had done so prior, and the song leads up to questioning their religion as the Christian church is not very accepting of the situation, which is a common thing when sexuality and church come into play. At the end of the song, he references the infamous situation where he was at a show back in 2018 and had a white chick in the audience come on stage and rap his song, but she used the N-word and he told her she had to bleep that word out. I get where he's going with that last sentiment in the song, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that disagree with him there. Personally, I don't appreciate the comparisons, but to each their own. For those that haven't listened to the song yet, I'm referring to the end of the 4th verse with the lines, "To truly understand love, switch position. Faggot, 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 we can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say nigga." Like I said, it's one of the more controversial songs on the album. Besides that, the song is pretty cool. It's a topic that hasn't really been talked about in hip-hop a lot, especially in the mainstream, and production-wise, I'm alright with it as well. The next track, Mr. Morale, I don't recommend playing loud, as that intro, out of context, is pretty suggestive with all that heavy breathing and moaning that Kendrick is doing. Like, what? It makes sense a bit more once he starts rapping, as he has this almost rushed and frantic flow. The song comes across as a letter to his children, as he starts each verse off directly addressing them with a frantic sounding pace, talking about a variety of things ranging from his own inner demons to watching his cousin, Baby Keem's mother, suffer with addiction and give birth to a millionaire, to even questioning if R. Kelly wasn't molested, would he still turn out the way he did. The track features singer Sam Dew, as well as PG Lang signee Tana Leone, as well as more words from Eckhart Tolle on the outro. I like how so easily he's able to weave in such deeply personal lines, like talking about the family trauma, and weave back out into talking about issues on a more macro level, like society and the pandemic, while still sounding good. The next track, Mother I Sober, could be called Black Generational Trauma, but I guess that would be a bit too on the nose. Kendrick essentially whispers throughout the majority of the track, and it has a very solemn feel. The song covers trauma in our communities and how it's often a cycle. He speaks on sexual abuse, mainly between families, which is something all too common, especially in poverty-stricken communities. This is probably the deepest I've heard Kendrick get on a track, and it's so full of sorrow and pain, it leaks through in every bar. He doesn't even sound like he's rapping here. It's like a therapy session with him and the listeners. He mentions his fiancée recommending him to go to therapy because of everything that happened, which seems like the driving force behind the album sounding the way that it does. This does sound like a closing track, but there is one more, that being Mirror. It features Kodak on the intro with the line, "I choose me," which is also a large part of the chorus and goes along with the title, as if in a mirror, you see your own reflection. I see the song as Kendrick seeing that ultimately he needs to do better for himself and do better for the people around him, like his fiancé and children, but that it starts with better handling these traumatic experiences and pain that he's detailed throughout the album. The chorus repeats the words, "I chose me, I'm sorry." Perhaps the apology is a bit of a sarcastic one, like, I chose to focus on fixing my own problems, instead of focusing on other people and their issues, which would tie into a previous song on the album when he had the chorus that talked about not being able to please everyone. Of course, this is just my interpretation of it. I think it's a pretty good closing track for the album overall. The main themes of the album I see are accepting yourself for who you are and those around you, but also working on improving yourself as well to better deal with the traumatic experiences that we face, to become more well-rounded individuals, and to also grow together as couples and as society as a whole. I'd say it might be one of the more inclusive and widespread themes his albums have touched on. Family and relationships are another thing that the album talks about often. I think it was pretty well executed. The backlash about featuring Kodak on here, I feel, is a bit unnecessary, and it seems like it's either coming from those that feel that he's not as great a rapper as Kendrick and undeserving of it in a sense, or those that still take issue with his past legal troubles, being in and out of jail for various crimes. However, for the latter, I see it as almost Kendrick's way of trying to help Kodak, as well as show an example of sorts of the stereotypical young black man who turned to rapping, which would tie into Kodak's solo track, the Interlude from Disc 1, and the theme of the album of growth and doing better in life. So hey, if you don't like it, there might be a deeper meaning behind it. Or perhaps Kendrick just really wanted to work with Kodak Black. I don't feel like the album needed to be 2 discs really, as it's about the same length as To Pimp a Butterfly, which was only a single disc. We can speculate as to why he did it, but maybe Kendrick will come out and explicitly state why he chose to do it that way. Overall, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is a pretty decent album, and I can easily recommend this to Kendrick fans, but if you've heard his previous albums and didn't really enjoy them, I can't say you have a very different opinion on this one. So as always, thanks for watching. What do you guys think about the album so far? Share it in the comment section below, and let me know if you'd like me to review other new albums, or even old albums. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.